The State Capture Commission has revealed how SARS was intentionally dismantled, and the report stating that the receiver of revenue was dismantled under former President Jacob Zuma and Commissioner Tom Moyane. Speaking over the weekend, the former President Thabo Mbeki describing the capture of the tax collector as treasonous. UDM Chief Whip Nqabayomzi Kwankwa joins us for more on this conversation. Good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time. It's a really strong description from the former president around how we should be looking and viewing the corruption that took place at SARS. Of course, we have the benefit of looking back at some of these events with hindsight and the opportunity to ask serious questions about the accountability that we are seeing today for an act described as treasonous.
Well, for us, good evening, Kathy, and good evening to the viewers at home, and thank you for having us. Well, for us, the entire state capture saga is treasonous, in the sense that the intention was to steal. It was brazen theft of state resources and taxpayers' monies, which were supposed to be used to uplift the poor and to deal with the material conditions of our people. Unfortunately, we had leaders who had gone rogue, leaders who were corrupt, who decided to appropriate public funds for private use. But we agree indeed with former President Thabo Mbeki, because even if you were to go back to the Newzroom report, Judge Newzroom report, which also highlighted all of these transgressions that took place at SARS, but also and specifically said that its mechanisms of accountability at SARS were dismantled during the period of former Commissioner Tom Moyane. Even sophisticated IT systems that were developed at the time were halted. But also there was a general culture of fear where the commissioner was only accountable to himself and not accountable to anyone, which created the hollowing out and the destruction and the dismantling of SARS step by step during that period. And the former president is quite correct in saying once you do that to an institution that is as key to any socio-economic development agenda of the nation, your actions should be considered treasonous and you should be held to account for it. And because all of the reports, starting with the Newzroom report, if you like, because it came before the State Capture Commission of Inquiry report, although they say the same thing, but they also cite the individuals responsible, as the former president was saying. But we don't feel that up to this point enough has been done to deal with those individuals and make sure that they're held accountable. However, as we make this point, we're mindful of the fact that the president submitted recently his plan about outlining his plan as to how he intends to deal with the state capture saga in its entirety. And once we're able to interact with that, with those recommendations and plans of action, we'll then be in a position to see whether the steps being undertaken are enough or not.
Part of what it says to us, of course, is that when we look at the state of SARS today, and often, you know, the capture will be spoken about in the context of something that has happened, but that the institution has been able to move on, has been able to recover and claw back some of those lost years. But that, of course, suggests that it's not enough to say that we have a better institution today. If you still have the individuals that were really at the heart of this dismantling of SARS not being held fully to account.
That's why we're saying, remember, as opposition parties in particular, we've been calling on Parliament to deal with the different installments of the state capture reports as they were being submitted by the Chief Justice at the time to the President, because those reports would then come to Parliament for us to actually have sight of them, read them, peruse them, and prepare and develop our own way forward. I think that now that the President has submitted his response on how to deal with the state capture report in its entirety and comprehensively, Parliament should now actually assert its authority and make sure that those recommendations firstly are implemented, and that those people who were responsible for dismantling SARS and all other state institutions are held to account without fear or favor. And that is one of the things that we as the opposition are going to make sure that we do. It's one of the issues that even my party leader in the opposition collective on behalf of the UDM has been calling for consistently, to say We did not have to wait for President Cyril Ramaphosa to outline his plan of action. As Parliament, we are also accused of having failed in our constitutional obligation of holding the executive to account. What we should have done, we should have started already in dealing with the state capture reports as they were being released by the Chief Justice. But not all is lost in the sense that the reports are there and the President has actually submitted his own response to it. And now we have our own work cut out in ensuring that his recommendations and what we view to be appropriate responses to some of what has happened are what we should be doing going forward.
You're bringing me to my last point here, and that's really the failure of Parliament to hold the executive to account, but also the fact that this capture took place under the watch of government. These are entities that still had to report to various committees of government, of Parliament rather. And it is the very same Parliament that the President is now hoping will be able to bring in legislative reforms that can fine-tune part of what we already have to prevent state capture in future. Do you think our Parliament is up to the task? Because collectively, you know, it's not a good picture that emerges of the work of MPs across the board.
Well, we've made it clear that when people refer to Parliament, they shouldn't tie everyone with the same brush. If you go back to reports of these various committees, whether it's public enterprises that deal with SOEs and any other parastatal that accounts to Parliament, you will find that the opposition would either not adopt a report or introduce a minority report or disagree with the recommendations or even flag issues during debates and deliberations in portfolio committees, which will then be ignored by the majority party, and they will just vote you down and steamroll the process and make sure that Parliament adopts the report. So when people say Parliament has failed, I accept that we're all Parliament, but we actually need to be a bit circumspect and understand that some of us in the opposition actually raised these things as far back as 2013, right when they started, but we were completely ignored. You're quite right in saying, I think what we should be doing now as leaders is first make sure that the recommendations are implemented, that we deal properly with the state capture report and what needs to be done to remedy the situation. If the ANC continues to use its majority to bully us at Parliament, we'll use whatever avenue that is available at our disposal to make sure that whatever needs to be done for the benefit of South Africa and the benefits and the best interests of South Africa is done, even if it means taking them to court on some of the issues. But I think what is also important, Kate, is something that we've highlighted many times to say the ANC over time has weakened Parliament as an institution. The supportive structures that help us with the work we do at portfolio committee level, they've been all taken away. Parliament is not appropriately resourced. I want to give an example. You sit in a portfolio committee, you sit with the directors general who are able to actually hire the best and the brightest minds to help them with their work. You have to hold that executive to account with all the resources that they have, in the majority of instances with just one or two content advisors and administrative support to the committee. The Parliament as an institution needs to be beefed up with people who are highly qualified with the necessary expertise to be able to come and work in Parliament but support the work of portfolio committees. But we also need members of Parliament who respect they swore allegiance to the Constitution of the Republic and not to a political party. So if we can get leaders of high caliber who understand that when they swear allegiance to the Constitution, they are going to serve the Constitution and the people of South Africa and focus less or really forget about political parties in instances where matters are about public interest or national interest.
Nqabayomzi Kwankwa will leave it there for tonight. He's the Chief Whip of the UDM.